She took me to the hospital and left, first saying she'd go and fill out the paperwork, and then texting me, "Old lady, you're not going to pull through, don't bother me." A week later, I woke up in an empty room, no money, no documents, no help. My name is Ruth, I am 68 years old, I am a grandmother, I make good oatmeal cookies, and I like to iron pillowcases while the radio plays old songs. If you saw me in the store, you would not think of words like fight or plan. You would think of coupons in a neat envelope and a purse that snaps shut. The woman who dropped me at the hospital was my daughter-in-law, Tessa. She is the mother of my two grandchildren, and I once thought she was thoughtful because she remembered my favorite tea. I learned later she remembered the PIN number on my ATM card faster. The day she took me, I fell hard in the kitchen. The floor had a cold spot because the window seal is old. I bent to lift a pan, and the room spun. I remember the smell of burnt toast from the morning and a stripe of sun across the linoleum. I heard my own breath like a whistle. I woke to Tessa's voice saying, "Stop being dramatic," and the hard edge of the car seat under my neck. She drove fast and talked fast. At the hospital doors, she wheeled me inside and said she would fill out the paperwork. "I'll be right back," she said. She said she would call my son. She said she would bring me my sweater from the back seat. She walked away. I waited. I do not remember the next week. The nurse told me later my fever went up, and I kept pulling at the IV. They tied my hands softly so I would not hurt myself. They gave me fluids, and I slept like a stone at the bottom of a pond. When I opened my eyes, the room was quiet. My throat felt like sand. There was no purse on the chair. My sweater was there on the hanger, but the pockets were empty. No phone, no wallet, no keys. A stack of hospital cups sat in a plastic bag on the floor like little ghosts. I pressed the call button, and a nurse with tired eyes came in. Her badge said Janelle. She said hello like we had already met, which we had, many times. "Where is my daughter-in-law?" I asked. "She left a number," Janelle said. "We called 3 times. No answer." "And my son?" I asked. "We called the number on your bracelet." It went to a blank line. No voicemail. I stared at the ceiling tiles and tried to find a pattern, as if I could read my future up there in small holes and seams. The air felt thin. I could see the little square of tape on the wall where a picture used to be. It made me want home so hard that it hurt. "Do you want to speak with the social worker?" Janelle asked. "Yes," I said, because I knew even then that the me who said no would not make it out clean. The social worker was named Nora. She wore a blue cardigan and kept her hair back in a low ponytail. She looked like someone who could carry a tray and a story at the same time. She sat in the chair and held a clipboard like it was a small shield. "Ruth," she said, like we were co-workers who had not met yet. "Do you have someone we can call to take you home when the doctor clears you?" "I thought I did," I said. "I think I do not." "Do you have any identification?" she asked, and when I told her I did not, she said we could fix that. She asked if I had a place where I kept extra copies. She asked about a safe deposit box. She asked about neighbors who knew me well. She did not ask me if I was afraid. I appreciated that. It let me answer the important parts first. I told her about the little pocket I had sewn into the hem of my church cardigan after a friend of mine had a nephew who took her checkbook. I had put a small key there 10 years ago, the key to a bank box that held copies of my documents, and a small envelope that I had labeled Ruth in case of emergency. I had shown it once to my husband, who smiled and said I was the careful kind. Then he had died, and I had forgotten the key in that secret place. I remembered it now. Nora went to the closet and brought me the cardigan. I found the bump in the hem and worked the key out with my thumb and 2 fingers. It fell into my hand like a coin. "Good," Nora said. "We will use that." She helped me sip water. She made a list with a blunt pencil. She wrote down the name of the bank and the box number. She wrote down the name of my neighbor next door, Kay. She wrote down what time we would try to leave. She told me to keep any messages. In her voice, keep sounded like save. Save it all. I told her about the text. "Read it to me," she said, because my phone was gone, but the words were in my head. I said, "Old lady, you're not going to pull through, don't bother me." I said the words in a flat tone like reading a weather report. Nora's eyes changed, then went calm again. "Thank you," she said. "We will write that down." They discharged me 2 days later. Someone had written, "Elder abandoned by caregiver," in my file. My doctor talked to me like a son talks to a teacher when he has to explain why he forgot his homework. He said things like dehydration and a small infection. He told me I needed rest and food. He told me not to be alone if I could help it. Nora met me at the door with a jacket and a paper bag with a sandwich and an apple. She gave me $40 in an envelope. She said it was from the staff coffee fund. I told her I could not take it. She said, "Take it anyway." "Pay it forward," she said. I did not know how yet, but I nodded. The cab driver helped me into the seat and turned down the radio. The city looked different from the back of a taxi, like a movie I had walked into late. We pulled up to the bank, and the air inside was cold and dry. The manager was a woman with straight hair and a sharp part. She looked at me, my hospital bracelet, and Nora's card, and then she decided I was real. She took me to a small room and opened my box. Inside were the things I had put there when my husband died, and I was afraid of a kind of rain I could not see. There were copies of my birth certificate and the deed to my house, the title to my old car, and a sealed envelope with my handwriting on it. I opened the envelope. There was a photocopy of my will from 2 years ago, $500 in 20s, and a list I had made long ago. It said, "Call Kay next door. Change the locks, freeze everything, breathe." I breathed. Nora smiled. "Let's call Kay," she said. Kay answered on the second ring. "Ruth," she said, "where are you?" "I went by your house, and the lock would not open with my key. There was a sign on your lawn. I did not want to think what I thought. I am at the bank," I said. "Will you come here and then come home with me?" She said yes. When she came through the bank doors, she wore her old raincoat over her pajamas and her hair set in curlers under a wool cap. She had her mouth pressed tight and her eyes bright. She hugged me, and we both made small sounds like you make when you lift something heavy that is not a box. We went from the bank to the police station. The desk officer sat us down and took my statement. I told him about the drop-off at the hospital. I told him about the text. I told him about the missing cards and the sign in the yard. He wrote it all down, and when I said the part about the text, he raised his eyebrows and said, "Do you want to add abandonment of a dependent adult?" The words were like dry crackers, but I said yes. He added them to the report. He gave me a case number and told me to call if I found any more information, even a receipt. Kay drove me home. The locksmith came at 4. He was a young man with a tired smile and a tool belt. He showed me how the old strike plates were weak and how the back door had been forced and patched with soft wood. He put in longer screws and new deadbolts that clicked like a lock in a bank movie. He said, "You'll sleep better." I believed him. My lawn had a real estate sign stuck into it like a fork into a cake. It said, "Open house Sunday 2 to 4. It had a phone number and the name of a realtor, Amanda. I stood by the curb with Kay. We looked like two women waiting for a bus. I called the number on the sign. Amanda answered with a voice that sounded like a smile. "Wildwood Realty, this is Amanda." "I am standing in my yard," I said. "Your sign is in it. I am the owner. I did not hire you." There was a long silence and then the sound of papers moving. "I was told—" "You were told lies," I said. "I have the deed. I have the keys. I filed a police report today for theft and elder abuse. Remove your sign by noon. Check your email in 20 minutes. You will receive a copy of the report and a letter from my attorney as soon as I have one, ma'am." "By noon," I said, and hung up. Kay took my hand. "You sounded like your husband when he used to deal with those roofing people," she said. It made me laugh. It felt good to laugh. We did not step inside right away. I stood on the porch and looked at my house like a place I used to know. The curtains at the front window were new and cheap. They were not mine. There was a dent in the porch rail that had not been there. The welcome mat was upside down, words pointing wrong. Inside, the smell of my house was changed. There was a strong smell of new paint over old cooking. The refrigerator was full of things I would not buy, like energy drinks and a fancy yogurt that tastes like perfume. My wedding china was stacked on the floor under a towel near the hallway, as if it were waiting to be loaded into a car. There were pizza boxes and balloons from a child's party that had popped and were lying flat. The photo of my husband was face down on the coffee table. I did not pick it up. I stood and looked at it. I wanted to see what it would teach me by where it was. Kay made a face at the mess. I told her we would clean later. First, we would see what was missing and what else was wrong. We walked from room to room, and I spoke out loud so I would hear myself. The hall closet had my winter coats, but not my cashmere scarf that my sister gave me. The drawer by the phone table was empty of my old cards and stamps. The kitchen drawer with the batteries held only a roll of duct tape and 2 screws. The safe in the bedroom closet had been opened with a small pry bar, the door bent like a tin can. Inside, nothing. They had not found the bank key. They had found everything else. At 6, the locksmith finished. He gave me new keys on a ring. He made me lock and unlock each door. He said it would help my hands remember. He wrote his number on a slip of paper and told me to call if I felt unsure at night. "We have a 24-hour line," he said. I thanked him and put the number on my refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a cat. At 8, Tessa and my son pulled into the driveway like it was any other night. I saw their faces through the front window. They laughed at something and stepped onto the porch. The new deadbolt held. Their laughter stopped. I opened the door. Tessa's face went pale. My son looked at me and then at the lock. He said, "Mom," in a voice that tried to be soft. I did not feel soft. "You left me," I said. "You left me in a hallway." Tessa lifted her chin. "You were a burden," she said. "We had to make choices." "And I made mine," I said. 10 minutes. Take your clothes, not my furniture, not my dishes. I have a police report, a locksmith receipt, and a neighbor who has been here all day. I printed your text, and it is in an envelope by the door for the officer if you try to be clever. My son reached like he would touch my arm. "Mom, let's be reasonable." "When you left me in a hospital hallway, reason left with you," I said. 9 minutes. They did not move until 2 police cars pulled up and blue light shone through the thin curtains. The officers were kind and steady. One of them had gray hair at the temples and spoke like someone's brother. He took pictures. He asked for identification. Tessa did not have hers. She had mine, or she had had it. I told the officer my wallet was missing. He nodded and wrote it down. They carried their clothes out in trash bags. My son could not look at me. Tessa looked right at me and made a face like disbelief and hate mixed together. I stood straight, my hands flat on the table again so they would not shake. After the house was quiet, Kay made tea. We did not drink it. It got cold and we forgot it. We sat at the kitchen table and I took out a notebook. We made a list. It was not fancy. It said, "Call Mr. Adler, the lawyer, call bank to freeze, call credit bureau, call Nora, sleep." I slept in the guest room because it felt less broken. I put a chair under the doorknob like I was a girl at camp, and I slept with my cardigan under my pillow. I woke to birds and the sound of a school bus 2 streets over. The house held. The lock held. I made toast and held it over the sink so crumbs would not go all over the floor. I felt old and I felt steady. Mr. Adler's office smelled like lemon cleaner and paper. He had been young when my husband died. Now he was older than me in his eyes. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose when I told him the story. Then he smiled a little. "You did something smart 2 years ago," he said. "You put the house into a revocable trust with you as trustee." We set it up to avoid probate. It has another effect. No one can sell this house without your signature. No one can list it. We will send letters to the real estate office and to the multiple listing service. We will send a copy of your police report and ask for a hold. We will send a letter to your daughter-in-law telling her to cease and desist any attempt to act as you. He dictated the letters while his assistant typed. He paused and asked me if I wanted to change my will. I said I would think about it, and I did not take long to think. At home, I found more small things wrong. The oven knobs were greasy. My rosary was gone from the little dish on my nightstand. A pillowcase was missing from the linen closet. These things are small, but they tell a story too. I made a second list. Missing items, value, memory. It helped me stay calm to write down the memory. It made it feel like I kept the thing after all. Nora called me the next day. "We filed a report to Adult Protective Services," she said. "An investigator will visit to make sure you are safe. It is not a punishment for you. It is a check. They will ask questions. Answer straight. Do not protect the people who did this." "I know," I said. "I was raised to keep family matters inside the walls of the house. I had new walls now with better locks. I could open my mouth and say it." The investigator came on a Thursday morning. He wore a plain shirt and had a notebook. He asked about money and food and who could drive me to appointments. He asked if I felt safe. I told him the truth. He looked at my new locks and my lists taped inside a cabinet door. He looked at the open house sign I had taken from the yard and shoved behind the garage. He nodded. "You are doing the right things," he said. 4 days later, the officer from the station called. "They tried to renew your driver's license at the DMV," he said. "Your daughter-in-law was detained when the clerk saw the alert. There will be a hearing. Would you like to submit a victim statement?" "Yes," I said. "I want to say what being left on a bench feels like." He was quiet for a moment. "Write it like you speak," he said. "Simple. Let the judge hear your kitchen voice." I sat down that afternoon and wrote my statement on lined paper. I wrote about the room that felt like a box without a label. I wrote about counting holes in ceiling tiles. I wrote about my grandson's drawing on my refrigerator that said "Cookie Grandma," and how I thought maybe I would never see it again. I wrote about the text. I wrote the words out by hand. I wrote them slowly so I would not look away. It took me 3 tries to write "old lady" without my hand shaking. Amanda, the realtor, came by the next day. She stood on the porch with her clipboard and her mouth tight. "I am so sorry," she said. "I was told you were moving into assisted living and asked to list the house. I should have checked. I should have met you. I pulled the listing down. I called the association. I put a note on your name in our system. No one from our office will touch your address again without 3 pieces of proof and your face in front of us." She handed me a tin of cookies that she probably kept for open houses. I did not want them, but I took them, because I could tell she was trying to put something back. "You can pay it forward," I said, using Nora's phrase. "Teach your office to check on elders. Teach them to see a sign." She nodded. "I will," she said. She looked like someone who had learned a hard thing fast. "I am not fragile. I am paper and pen. I freeze the accounts and her card fails right there at the pump. She won't be ready to meet my determination." But before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. I called the bank and froze my accounts. I called the credit bureaus and put a fraud alert on my name. The man on the phone spoke so fast I had to ask him to slow down. He did. He told me I could get free reports because of the police report. He told me to check even small accounts. I wrote it all down and put the notes in a folder that I labeled with a marker, not with a pencil. I learned to ask people to slow down. People will, if you ask. I found my son's old shoebox under the bed in the guest room. It had little Lego bricks in it and a Matchbox car. It also had 3 crumpled receipts for electronic stores and 2 ATM slips with my bank number missing a digit. They had tried to guess it. I sat on the floor and felt tired down to the bone. I remembered when my son used to draw cars and give them to me, and I would tape them on the fridge and tell him he had talent. He had the kind of talent that breaks a mother when it goes wrong, the talent of excusing. Nora came by with pamphlets for a support group for elders who had been taken advantage of. I did not think of myself as someone who needed a group. I thought of myself as someone who needs good bread and quiet. But she put the pamphlets on the table and told me there would be coffee and people who would not ask for anything. I said I would try. I went. At the group I listened. A man told us how his nephew sold his lawnmower while he was in rehab. A woman told us how her daughter-in-law took her pills and sold them. We sat in a circle, and we did not use big words. We said hurt and tired and ashamed. Then we said better and okay and thank you. I brought oatmeal cookies the second week. People ate them with their hands under their paper plates so the crumbs would not fall. It made me like them more. My grandchildren came on a Saturday afternoon. I told my son he could bring them and that he should wait in the car. He did. The children ran up my walk like puppies and hugged my legs. They talked over each other and told me everything at once. Lily lost a tooth. Max had a spelling test. They had a goldfish that died and had been buried in the yard in a yogurt cup. "Are you mad at Mommy?" Lily asked. She is 6 and has eyes like pans. She does not blink when she asks a hard question. "I am mad at choices," I said. "I love you." We made cookies. They put blue sprinkles on everything. Lily drew a picture of me with a cape. She wrote Super Grandma in shaky letters. Max drew our house with a big lock on the door and a cat in the window, even though I do not have a cat. I taped their pictures on the fridge over the place where my husband's photo had been face down days ago. I put his photo back up and it felt right. He smiled like he used to, like he was supposed to smile. My son stood on the porch with his hands in his pockets and his mouth tight. He looked like a boy outside a classroom after he'd been called to the principal. He tried not to look at me, but he could not help it. I went to the door and said the thing I had practiced saying. "You left me," I said. "You let her leave me." "The door still opens for your children. It does not open for you in the same way," he cried. I did not hug him. I did not enjoy not hugging him. I felt a steady heat in my chest, like when you iron and move the iron slowly and do not stop in one place. I told him about the hearing. I told him I would not push for the maximum if he helped write down the truth and if he took steps. He nodded. He is good at nodding. I needed him to be good at doing. The hearing was in a small room with blue chairs. The judge wore her hair in a tight bun. She looked at Tessa like someone looks at a dent in their car that was not there yesterday. Tessa wore a neat dress and a cardigan and had her hair smooth. She cried when it was her turn. Her lawyer said words like misunderstanding and stress and financial pressure. The judge held up my printed page with the text. "Stress does not send this message," she said. "This message sent itself. I am finding probable cause for theft, fraud, and abandonment of a dependent adult. We will set a date for the next hearing." I read my statement. I read it in my kitchen voice. I did not look at Tessa. I looked at the judge. I told her about the bench and the holes in the ceiling tiles. I told her about not hearing my name on a mouth I knew for a week. I told her about the fridge with my grandson's drawing and about the open house sign. The judge listened like I was telling her how to make her bed in a hotel, so it feels like home. At the end, she said, "Thank you." My son gave a statement too. He said that he had let Tessa make decisions because he was tired. He said tired like it was a reason and not a state. The judge looked at him and said, "Mr. Connolly, tired is for bodies after work, not for minds deciding whether to leave your mother on a bench." He bowed his head. I do not know if the words got into him. I hoped they did. After court, I went to the bank and opened a small savings account for each grandchild with $100 to start. The manager wrote their names in neat letters. I told her I would add small amounts each month. She said every bit helps. I told her it was not about the amount. It was about a door that should open when someone treats people right. That night, I changed my will with Mr. Adler. I left the house to the trust and the trust to the library when I die. The library has been my friend for a long time. It is a place where I always knew what to do. You return things, you use your inside voice, you treat paper with respect. I told Mr. Adler that my son would receive a small stipend as long as he completed counseling, wrote a real apology, and came for 6 months of regular visits with the children without Tessa. If he did not, his portion would go to the library fund. Mr. Adler said, "It is your choice." He did not argue. He did not say it was harsh. I liked him more for that. I taped a copy of the conditions inside the hall closet door where the vacuum hangs. I thought of the person who might find it someday. I hoped that person would be my granddaughter grown up, and I hoped she would roll her eyes at my labels and make a joke and then read every word. The realtor, Amanda, called and asked if she could bring her boss to apologize. They came, and the boss had a folder with new office policies inside. He said they would now require in-person verification for elder-owned properties. He asked if I would talk at their office for 10 minutes about what happened to me to make it real for his younger agents who are good at apps and not always good at eyes. I said yes. I wore my church cardigan and I told them how not everything that looks easy is okay, and how a signed paper is not always a kind paper. They listened. Some took notes. One girl cried a little. I told her it would be okay if she learned fast. The support group asked me to speak too. I brought the little cardigan and showed them the pocket in the hem where I had kept the key. I said, everyone should have a pocket like this. One for softness, one for something sharp. A key is something sharp when you need it. People nodded. One man told me he would go home and sew a pocket into his coat. I liked the picture of him doing that. Big hands and a needle and thread. Amanda asked me if she could tell my story without names in a training for the state board. I said yes. Mr. Adler said he would like to help her with the wording. I baked cookies for that meeting. I do not know if the cookies helped. People look softer when they are holding a cookie. Adult Protective Services closed my case after they did 3 visits and saw I had locked things down. The investigator told me I did well. It is funny to have someone tell you that you did well at protecting yourself from people who should have protected you. I said thank you and walked them to the door and locked it after they left, not in a loud, angry way, in a careful way. One afternoon, I cleaned out the hall closet. I found the little shoebox that used to hold my son's baseball cards. It now held a set of keys I did not recognize. I put the box on the table and waited for Kay to come by. She recognized one key as a storage unit key. We went together and opened a small unit with a roll-up door on the edge of town. Inside, there were 2 cheap suitcases and a plastic bin. The bin held my robe, my jewelry box, and a stack of my old letters from when I wrote to my sister when she was in Arizona. They had been stolen from my house and put here. I told the officer. He met us there and took pictures. He shook his head and said, "People will put anything in storage. Promises, lies, other people's memories." We brought my things home. I made a cup of tea and opened my jewelry box. My wedding ring was still there. Tessa had not taken that. I could not tell if she had left it from pity or because it was too small to bother with. Either way, I put it back on my finger. I am still married in my heart to the man who sat in a lawn chair and told me when to turn the meat on the grill, even if he is dead. No one gets to take that from me. Tessa's mother called me once. Her voice was hot and hard. She said I had ruined her daughter's life. I said her daughter had ruined pieces of mine and had tried to sell the rest. She told me I had always been cold to Tessa. I told her I had given Tessa my house to sleep in, my pantry, my time, and my patience. She hung up. I sat with the quiet after and let it wash over me like a tide. Then I got up and moved my husband's chair to the window so I could see the maple tree out front, the one that turns red early. The next hearing came. Tessa's lawyer asked for a deal. The prosecutor offered a plea for a lower charge if Tessa paid restitution and did community service and stayed away from me. I wanted to argue. I wanted the judge to say big words that would follow Tessa forever. Mr. Adler put his hand on my arm and said, "Restitution now is better than righteous words later." I agreed. The judge read the conditions. Tessa nodded. She stole a look at me. I looked at her the way a person looks at a plane taking off that you missed. You want to feel something, and you do not. It is already gone. I talked at the library for the first time about what had happened. We started a small Saturday group for grandparents called Keys and Stories. We talked about mail scams and accounts and how to put a privacy password on doctors' offices so people cannot get information by saying they are you. We had a little handout with simple steps. I helped a woman named Dolores put her Medicare card in a sleeve so the number does not show through. She cried a little when I held her hand. I told her she was not foolish. She was busy. Sometimes being busy when you are old is not people in clubs. It is the work of staying yourself. My son started counseling. He went twice a week at first, then once. He wrote me letters for the first time in his life where he did not make jokes. He came over every Saturday with the children. He sat on the porch while they were inside with me. He did not ask to come in. He looked at the maple tree and at his shoes. He looked like someone who is waiting for a bus again, but this time he knew the schedule. He asked for small things like a glass of water. He did not ask for money. I took that as a small sign. He wrote an apology. It was not long. He wrote, "I am sorry I left you. I was a coward. I let her be mean when I should have been kind. I will spend the rest of my life trying to make it even. It is not possible to make it even. Even is for scales in science class. But I folded the letter and put it in the drawer with my good dish towels. I would take it out sometimes and look at it the way you look at an old postcard. It is not the place, but it shows you where you were. I went to the DMV with Kay and got a new ID. The woman at the counter spoke very fast and then slower when I asked. She took my picture. The flash made me blink. The photo looks like someone else, but everyone says that about these photos. I held the card in my hand like a small flag. It felt like proof that I had a name that belonged to me. We cleaned the house. We did one drawer a day. That is all I could bear. We scrubbed the sticky lines on the shelf in the fridge. We washed the china and put it back. We found my rosary in the pocket of a coat I had not worn in months. I said a decade at the kitchen table. I do not pray like some people do, with a long list and a lot of words. I pray small, like giving thanks for a light turning green when you are tired. I kept eating simple food. A doctor once told me simplicity is a medicine. I ate toast and soup. I ate apples with peanut butter. I slept in the guest room for a while and then moved back to my bed. The first night back, I felt like someone coming home from a trip and checking if the suitcase is gone from the hall. It was. The hallway was clear. There is nothing like a clear hallway when you have your own key. Amanda called me and asked if I wanted to talk at a short seminar the board was doing on elder fraud. I said yes, but I would not speak long. I would say two things: call the real owner and use your eyes. I went. A young man asked me what he should do if a family member stood in the way. I told him to move around them, not through them. Do not fight in the doorway, I said. Walk around the house. Knock on the back door. Go to the neighbor. Go to the bank. Someone will open a door. He wrote it down on a clean sheet in neat print. It made me feel like a teacher. I was not a teacher in my life, not in a classroom. But here I was. A neighbor named Eileen came by after hearing about what happened to me. She is 80, and her nephew had been living with her. He was taking her checks for gas and groceries and not coming back until late at night. She told me she was embarrassed. I told her to stop saying that word. She cried and said she knew I would say that. We sat at my table and called the bank and cut up her extra card with my scissors. We called Nora at the hospital, and Nora told us where to go for help. We called the locksmith and told him it was Eileen's turn. He came. He installed locks with long screws and told Eileen she would sleep better. I saw him look at me and saw that he had told that truth before and believed it. The judge set the final hearing 6 months later. Tessa had done her community service at a church thrift shop. She had paid part of the restitution. The judge read her a short lecture that sounded like a kitchen voice, too. She told Tessa she would not allow one more misstep. She said, "If you step on the edge again, you fall." I watched Tessa's face. She looked like someone who wanted to be anywhere else. She did not look at me. I did not need her to. I had made my own audience by now: Kay, Nora, Mr. Adler, the people at the support group, Amanda, the librarian with the neat haircut, my grandchildren with their hands sticky from sprinkles. We started a fund at the library for literacy in my husband's name. He would have liked that. He liked to read the same book every Christmas and cry quietly at the last page. We called it the Connolly Fund because even after everything, we are a family, and a last name is also a door. We held a little ceremony. The librarian gave me a pin shaped like a book. A boy in the back clapped too loud. It made me smile. I spoke for 2 minutes and sat down. People thanked me for being brave. I told them it was not brave. It was a list and a lock and a person who answered the phone. I put together a binder at home. It has my new ID, my doctor's contacts, my bank sheets, my trust paperwork, and my will. It has a list of people to call with Kay's number at the top. I labeled the tabs with a thick marker. I put the binder on the top shelf of the hall closet where the vacuum hangs. I told Kay where it is. I told my son where it is too. He looked at me and said, "I know you do not trust me yet." I said, "I am not supposed to trust you yet. Trust is not a gift card. You earn it with a receipt." One afternoon, I was in the backyard pulling weeds. The children came over and helped. Lily pulled one weed and said, "This is easier when the ground is wet." I said, "Most things are." She nodded like I had told her a new rule. Max found a quarter under the bird bath. He held it up like treasure. He asked if he could keep it. I told him to put it in his pocket and not show it to his mother if it would start a fight. He said, "I know," in a way that made me sad. Some days I missed how it used to be, when I thought I was safe inside my house because it was my house and because I had loved people inside that house for years. Then I would remember that safety is a thing you maintain. It is like a garden. If you do not pull the weeds, they do not pull themselves. They do not care what you want. You have to bend down and pull. It is not a pretty thought. It is a true one. A month later, I found a small camera tucked behind the plant on the bookshelf. It was one of those little cameras you can plug in that watch your living room. I debated what to do and then called the officer. He came by and took it and later brought me a printout of some of the footage. I watched 5 minutes. It showed Tessa opening my mail while smiling at the television. It showed my son not looking at her and looking at the floor. I turned it off. I did not need to watch more. I had enough. Enough is a useful word when you are tempted to soak yourself in pain like a dish left in a sink. You can still do the dishes if you drain the sink. I went to the Sunday market. The woman who sells the honey asked me where I had been. I said, "In a story." She laughed, then saw I meant it, and stopped laughing. She asked if I was okay now. I told her I was getting okay. She gave me a jar that had a bee still on the glass from when she had poured it. It felt nice to hold something sweet. There was a day when my son came with the children and asked if he could come inside for 5 minutes. I said yes. He stood in the kitchen and looked at the fridge with the drawings and the schedule for school taped up. He put his hands on the back of a chair. He said, "I started going to a group too." I said, "Good." He told me he had applied for a job. I said, "Good." He told me he had not seen Tessa in 3 weeks because of the order. He said he missed his kids when they were with her and did not miss her. He cried again. I got the dish towel and put it in his hands. He wiped his face and said, "I am trying to be a man." I said, "A man is a person who carries a bag without dropping the fragile thing inside." I do not know what will happen to my son. That is the honest thing. You can put conditions in a will. You cannot put conditions on a human and make them stick by paper. But you can make a path. You can stand at the edge and say, "Here, this way he may follow." He may sit down and take off his shoe and say later, "I will not hold my breath. I will fill my lungs and stand in my kitchen and bake cookies for the children, for the group, for the locksmith if he ever comes at night for someone else, and then needs a cookie before he goes home to sleep." The day the library sent me the first thank you note from a child who got their first chapter book from the fund, I put it on the fridge next to Super Grandma. The child's note was written in pencil and said, "I like the book about the dog that is brave." I stood in front of the fridge for a long time and smiled. It is good to see your name next to a thing that helps. My name is not a big name. It is not on a stadium. It is on a little fund that buys simple books with big print. That is enough. Sometimes I walk past my bedroom and catch my face in the mirror. I do not look like what I have been through. People expect scars and hard lines when bad things happen. I look like a woman who knows where she keeps her keys. That is what I am. I keep a spare key still in my cardigan hem because you never know. I keep another in a small tin on the top shelf of the pantry behind the oatmeal. I tell Kay. I do not tell my son yet. That is not spite. That is sense. On the first day it snowed that winter, the world went quiet. My yard looked clean. The maple tree held its branches like someone holding an armful of white towels. The children came over to make a small snowman that was more like a snow lump. We gave it a carrot nose and 2 buttons from my jar. The snowman leaned to the side. We took a picture. We went inside and made hot chocolate. The children sat on the floor and let the heat sink into their coats. They said they were happy. I believed them. A child is the only person you can believe on happiness without checking their bank account. At night, when I turn off the lights, I touch each lock and say goodnight to it like a friend. It is not fear, it is habit. It is a way to tell myself that I will wake up in the morning in the same place. It is a way to tell the house that I will respect it like it respects me by holding. I climb into bed. I think of the holes in the ceiling in the hospital and how they were my stars for a week. I do not remember. Now I have my own ceiling with a little crack by the light fixture that looks like a line on a hand. I think of that line as the line that brought me here. I have told this story to you in simple words because simple words are strong. You can carry them without dropping them. If you are a grandmother like me and something like this happens to you, make a list. Call the bank, change the locks, breathe, tell the truth to the people who will help. Let them help. Do not hide the text. Do not soften the words because you love the person who sent them. Love can sit in a chair for a while and wait. You do not have to serve it tea when it has burned your tongue. I sent a message to the family chat on a Tuesday morning. It said, I am all right. If you were not planning to help me, do not worry about me. If you were, the kettle is on. I attached a photo of the text Tessa sent me that day at the hospital. I did not do it to humiliate her. I did it to make the truth sit with us at the table. When truth sits at your table, it eats first. It does not always have good manners. It sometimes chews with its mouth open. It is still your best guest. It will tell you when it is time to close a door and when it is time to open one. I do not wait by the window for replies anymore. I do my small things. I sweep the kitchen. I go to the library. I answer the phone when Nora calls to check in, and I tell her I am okay. I bring cookies to the support group and watch how people loosen their shoulders when they take a cookie, as if they remembered for a second that life also holds sweetness. I stand at my sink in the afternoon and watch dust in the sun, and it looks like small, stubborn stars. I do not make a story out of them in my head. I am in the story already. It has locks and keys and bread and a maple tree. It has two children who run up my path and throw their coats on the floor and ask if I have blue sprinkles. It has a woman who is old enough to be called old and stubborn enough to be called strong. It has a beginning I did not choose and an ending I will try to shape with simple acts. She took me to the hospital and left. She sent me a text that called me an old lady who would not pull through, who should not bother her. A week later, I woke up and pulled through. I bothered everyone who needed bothering. I learned to use simple words like locks and keys and no and yes and enough. I learned that you can lose your wallet and your cards and your people and still not lose yourself. I learned to keep a key in my hem and a list in my drawer and friends on my porch. Was I right to leave the house to the library fund, or would you handle the will differently? Please share your opinions in the comment section.
My grandma told me this story. I have many more stories. Subscribe so you don't miss the most interesting things.